Otherwise, we're recording the meeting. And if you want at a later stage, once Leigh-Ann has approved it, the recording will then become public knowledge. We'll give the last maybe 2 or 3 minutes. If you can, please keep yourself on mute. However, if you're happy to, it's really nice to talk to people. So if you're happy to, will you put yourself on video so that we can at least see you? And then Leigh-Ann also knows who she's looking at. What I do, Leigh-Ann, is I change my view to a gallery view, which means I can see everybody. Otherwise, what you can do is you can then, pin me, or I can pin you, one of those things. And if anyone wants to ask a question, please ask a question in the chat box. I'm going to write here, all questions ask here. As we're going through, I will be asking Leigh-Ann questions. So if you feel like I need to ask something specific, please feel free. And I will then ask Leigh-Ann. Please do not unmute yourself. Otherwise, it's going to be a free for all. And Leigh-Ann is going to be completely bombarded. But anyone wants to ask a question. And Leigh-Ann, I want to let you know that I can see some people that are from the other side of the pond from my Dubai days. So we are international at this point in time. So well done, Leigh-Ann.
That is very cool. That is great. It's nice to be able to let it go as global as we can get it to go.
Yeah, I mean, that was the reason why I wanted to start this. I'm calling it a podcast, although it's not necessarily a podcast at this point in time, but I believe it will become a podcast, is to change the dialogue. And I think if we can make it as international as possible, that's the best thing. Right. Yeah. So before I hand over to you, Leigh-Ann, let me just tell you the reason we started this is because I firmly believe that health is more than what you eat and drink. It's more than whether you exercise or whether you avoid certain foods. I firmly believe that health is diverse, dynamic, and deliberate. I firmly believe that health is not possible under the hand of only one practitioner or one discipline of medicine or healthcare, whether that's natural, alternative, or complementary. I firmly believe that health is a person's primary responsibility and must be person-specific. I firmly believe that health must be conversed on a physical, chemical, emotional, mental, spiritual, cultural, racial, and various other undetermined levels. And I firmly believe that there must be a better way than what is our current status quo. And with that, Leigh-Ann, I hand over to you. Tell us about yourself.
Thanks, Travis. I think after that, I feel like that's like the most amazing monologue I've heard in a long time. It's not really a monologue because it's like, but it's like this deep-seated, we share the same monologues internally around where health is. So by way of introduction, my name is Leigh-Ann Hasselbach. I am a biochemist, and a very long time ago, I also started asking the same similar questions, having this sort of internal monologue within myself about what is health and how do we approach health differently? How do we see different aspects of it? So you mentioned a couple of things, Travis, that really resonate with me around, so it doesn't matter. So where we are in terms of everything from food, nutrition, lifestyle, pharmacogenomics, in terms of like pharmaceuticals, interventions, sleep, meditation.
I'm going to stop you at this point in time, Leigh-Ann. You're going to have to help some of the not so smart people like me. What is a biochemist?
Okay, so really to the beginning.
So Genesis chapter 1 here.
Chapter 1. So
So
biochemistry is the field of science that investigates the chemical interactions for medicine, agriculture, for plant, humans, peoples. So it's every single chemical reaction for every organism on planet Earth. That is what we investigate and we study.
What I remember is there's a cell, and every cell has these pathways, these gateways. And I mean, now with Corona, we know the spike protein, how it attaches to the cells. But what I remember is there's calcium and magnesium channels, and that's the fundamentals. Sodium, I mean, a cell is the building blocks of the entire body. So, when you're talking chemistry, we're talking right at the heart of what it is to be a body, be an organism.
Yep. Yep. So biochemists, that is exactly it. We study each of those different molecular interactions. We understand all of those different movements, sodium, potassium, magnesium, all those channels that you spoke about, the cell, every single one of those little cellular interactions that are happening within the cell. That is what we study. And we're primarily taught to design drugs that interact with these kind of reactions and, you know, within these different pathways. So that is really where the basis of biochemistry is, but as biochemistry is extended into many different fields. So not only into medicine, but biochemistry is extended into, as I mentioned, agriculture and into pharmaceuticals and pharmaceutical design. So that is really what a biochemist does.
But let's take some of the lay people that are on this talk. I mean, why would they need to be interested in biochemistry? I mean, I remember studying all the cycles, the Krebs cycles and all those things, and it literally bored me to death. So, you know, why, and I'm considering myself in this question, why would someone like me be interested in biochemistry? Why would I be interested to know what you have to say? I mean, you know, let's see what's interesting about biochemistry.
So I think that the first thing is that what you would be interested in is, can I eat an avo or can I eat a nut? And the biochemistry where that becomes interesting is that we can say yes or no, depending on how your body's going to be able to process all of that information. So the biochemistry of our bodies, and why does someone want to be interested in this, is because ultimately we are defined by every single chemical reaction that makes us who we are. So every single thing that, whether you are, so a thought process or something that you're ingesting or an environment that within which you live is all affecting your chemistry. Your biological chemistry is interacting with your environment on a day-to-day basis. So whether that be a microorganism that's coming into your body. So why does someone want to be interested in biochemistry? Because it defines every single reaction in your body.
Can we simplify this to saying that you either have good chemistry, as in positive chemistry, as in really effective chemistry, and that you have really bad chemistry or really poor chemistry? Is that possible to
well, I feel like that's quite harsh. We don't want to tell anyone that they got bad chemistry at all. Everyone's got good chemistry. Everyone's body is defined the way that it should be defined. But what is exciting in the world that we're going to be chatting about a little bit, that I hope we're going to get into it, is that when you understand your chemistry will always be good. So all of the symptoms and things that we see in the world today are all just because we are misaligning information that's coming into our bodies or around us that is not matching up to what your chemistry is allowing. So I think that that's the exciting part of it. So good chemistry and bad chemistry.
Can we give that a definitive answer? You know, maybe not call it good chemistry, bad chemistry, but, you know, perhaps adaptive chemistry.
Yeah, I like that. That's a bit better. Adaptive chemistry. I think that what it is that someone may have better chemistry in understanding certain bits of information compared to somebody else that may not understand it. And that means that you need adaptive chemistry, or you need some kind of, I like the word adaptive. Where we're going to go with that is that realistically, that someone may be able to change something in order to get a different outcome in your own chemistry, if it is not ideal.
So how would someone know? I mean, obviously the first answer is a person's going to say, I have a pain or a symptom, but how would someone know if they need to be investigating their chemistry?
So a good example of this, Travis, at the moment is something as simple as cholesterol. So a lot of us go for blood tests and a lot of us go and investigate, and we think that we're intrinsically healthy. We're eating well, we're consuming good foods, we're doing all the right things, we have the best the market sort of shake that we're taking in the morning because we want to get some amino acids going, and we're doing all these good things that we think are so good. And then you go for a blood test and your cholesterol's off the charts. And someone else who is, so if we take two people and they're identical and they're doing exactly the same diet of a day and behavior of a day, and they have completely vastly different blood results. So why is that? So that is why it is important for us to understand that the chemistry becomes so important. And when someone does that and then the cholesterol is completely out of whack, what does that mean? What are we not understanding?
Yeah, I mean, where can
we get better clarity?
what I talk about it from a chiropractic point of view is there are physical, emotional, and chemical stresses, and that's going to be bombarding us on a day-to-day basis. And a lot of people they wait until symptoms occur before they do something about it. You know, what you're saying to me is we should be looking at it a couple of steps before and say, you know, where am I at now with my current lifestyle, my current surroundings? Is that fair to say?
Yes. Yes, that's very fair to say. Very fair to say. So what I'm saying is that you can wait until you have the symptom, or you can start understanding upfront beforehand where you are and how that chemical reaction could potentially go. So we can start matching information that will suit your biochemistry, and we can get a different outcome in that. You know, so maybe as we unpack that conversation a little bit more, we can, but the way that I always see it is biochemistry is circuit board. If you can imagine a circuit board, you know, if you've got light switches, if you can get more to the root cause and you can get there first before the symptom occurs, you're starting to get to the CPU processing of where the information lies, as opposed to waiting until you have the onset of an outcome. And I think that is, we've seen that in so many different instances. You know, one person will do it exactly the same as somebody else. And that may be just on a nutrition perspective.
I like what you said about diets. I mean, you know, there are these fad diets that come out all the time. And, you know, a person says, you know, particularly on Facebook or Instagram, you know, I've done this diet and it's worked amazingly for me and blah, 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 blah. And yet it might not necessarily have the right impact on my body. And so how does someone do that investigation of what's going to be beneficial for them?
Okay, so it's diet, and the other part of it is also in terms of just pharmaceutical interventions, normal pharmaceutical interventions. So I just want to touch base on that quickly, just take a step back about root cause. So how does someone do this? The first thing is that we need to understand as many of the genetic variations. So if we're able to understand a genetic variation, we're able to understand biochemistry. Biochemistry and genetics are intrinsically linked. The gene in itself is going to code information that is going to result in a molecule within the biochemical processing of the body that is going to do the job for us. So the more that we can understand at the root level how someone's circuitry board is actually wired, we can start predicting correctly how that circuit board is going to function when the light switch goes on. We can start seeing.
Let me ask a simple question. How many genetic circuitry or switchboards are identical?
Not one.
which means that you got to know yourself. That's what I wanted to get to.
Got to know yourself. This is where we're getting to. We're getting to the point where, and it's such an interesting thing. I made some notes earlier on while we were, you know, we've chatted a little bit, Travis, you and I, and I was thinking, you know, we went through an era of functional food, you know. So what is functional food? What does functional food mean? And where we're going now, we're going into this era of personalized nutrition. We're going into this era of personalized interventions, medical interventions. We're going into an era where we are going to have to start looking a lot more closely to your individual circuit board, because that is where we're starting to see these variations and how everybody responds differently to that kind of information. So the first protocol, understand those variations, know where you are first, so that we can start seeing where your biochemistry is going to function.
When I lived in Dubai, Leigh-Ann, I came across Ayurvedic medicine, and I don't know if you know anything about Ayurvedic medicine. They would analyze analyze the person from the three primary energies, Vata, Pitta, and Kapha, and that would give you your primary constitution. And they would then look at when to plant something, when to pick something, when to eat something, which direction to eat it in. They were literally so pedantic, and it was empirical evidence of what was good for one's own individual constitution. And when you were talking about medication, I think that's so important, because I mean, the amount of people that are on the same standard medications, whether they be a statin, an anti-inflammatory, whether it be an antidepressant or anti-anxiety, you know, those are the sort of standard answers. And yet, you know, what you're saying is people are going to get totally different results from that.
totally different results. You'll see that someone may be statin able. So to take a step back on I always pronounce Rivedic medicine. You got a nicer way of pronouncing it. But where we are with that, I mean, there is a field that is so vast that we're still trying to understand and unpack it, called epigenetics. Epigenetics in itself is how the environment actually triggers our DNA, modifies DNA, and alters DNA. So this is where we start getting into lifestyle. Say
it again. What does it do?
So epigenetics is the way in which our environments, so cellular environment as well as external environment, alters and affects our DNA. And that's the coolest.
And that's either for a positive direction or for a negative direction.
For a positive or a negative direction. And then we start getting into some more intrinsics. One of the key it is a cycle within our bodies, biochemical cycle in our bodies. It is the one that makes us human beings, is methylation. It's the one carbon folate metabolism cycle in our bodies that allows our bodies to produce and prepare methyl groups. Those methyl groups are intrinsic in epigenetic modifications. You get histone modifications. So as the DNA winds around the chromatin material, and how thoughts or lifestyle, or when you're planting food or grounding yourself, how those little markers actually are able to alter the formation of your DNA. And that is where you find it binds to the cysteine residue. So DNA has got 4 base pairs. There's a thing called cysteine. At that cysteine residue, you start getting these epigenetic markers, and you can start seeing. So there's a stunning video that is available on twins, identical twins, and how epigenetics through their life is altered through these cysteine residues. And
so what you're saying to me is that the previous understanding that people had, that whatever your genetic coding is that you got from mommy and daddy, at conception, that was fixed for life. What you're saying to me, that's not true.
No, because DNA code is fixed for life, but the expression of the DNA is not fixed for life. So genetics in itself, so variation of genetics, let's take an example, is, let's say, for example, that we understand that genetic variation means that we require folates. So that is, we're organisms on planet Earth, and we need folate, to do certain jobs for us. The genomics of it says, we understand that there is a variation in your DNA code, and in that variation, you can have certain things that can alter that code over a period of time that changes the information that DNA is making, and that is protein expression. What we're starting to understand is that the variation in itself determines the protein expression, but that we can actually use things like meditation, lifestyle, nutrients, and certain pharmaceuticals that come in to this part and change that expression pathway. And that is how we're able to start understanding that expression, what the body's actually making with this code, this information, can be altered. And that is a really exciting part for us. And
yes, I've changed my word now. It's not positive chemistry or negative chemistry. It's fully expressed chemistry versus inhibited chemistry. How does that sound? I love
that. Now that is exactly it. So fully expressing your own chemistry so that you start thriving, so that every one of those little cells starts to thrive and do what it needs to do. And then we start unwinding the symptoms of all the biochemistry that's going in the negative direction.
I mean, at this point in time, what for me, I'm excited about from what you're saying is, I'm 42 years of age. What is that fully expressed at 42? That's something that really excites me. When you're 20 and you've got testosterone oozing through every pore of your body, fully expressed is quite easy. But at 42, one could easily say, things could start to no longer fully express itself. So, what is the extent of fully expressed at somebody's age, at anyone's age? I don't know the ages of everyone on the talk, but I can imagine that there is a nice variety of people on this talk in terms of perhaps some mid-20s to mid-30s to 40s and 50s and 60s. What is fully expressed?
So, I mean, so one of the tools that we're working with at the moment is a anti-age technology, which basically looks at immune modulation. So when we talk about fully expressed, are we able to fully express in terms of immune regulation? Because immune regulation is intrinsic in aging of the cell. So when we look at aging of the cell, why does a cell age? What happens when we age? What happens? Why does testosterone start to decrease? So fully expressing means, okay, let's understand where Travis's entire code is. So we understand that cholesterol is the starting block for all of steroid hormone metabolism. We know that that is going to affect cortisol. We know that it's going to affect aldosterone. We know that that's going to affect renal functioning. We know that it's going to affect testosterone and progesterone, and it's going to affect your entire downstream sex hormone metabolism. What we start understanding in that is that cholesterol is defined by inflammation. So we start looking at inflammatory genes. So we go into like, how is cholesterol produced? Where is it produced? It is produced primarily, in certain organs of our bodies, but it is really expressed where that gene is coding for how cholesterol is moved about. So we start looking into all of that. When we go into cholesterol metabolism and inflammation is intrinsically linked to immunity. So how does Travis's body understand all of that inflammation and information, and then regulate immunity so that we're able to reduce the amount of cellular decomposition in the body over a period of time? And that becomes a full expression profile. So if we're able to reduce the amount of signals within a cell that degrade a cell, and we degrade the organism or prematurely age the organism, then we're able to actually go into building resilience. And that becomes such an interesting discussion, because immunity, inflammation, immune modulation, they're also intrinsically linked. And when we're able to understand how your cell, from something as simple as a transcription factor coding for how DNA is copied, if we're able to alter the expression of that transcription factor, we can get your body to do and express fully what it needs to do. So we go into, if we were to look at an 80-20 principle within cellular functioning, are we able to get all of Travis's cells, the more information we understand about Travis's root cause of everything, can we get Travis's cells to be functioning 80% as opposed to maybe 60%? And if we can do more and more and more of that.
In my office, Leigh-Ann, I mean, I always talk to my patients about quality of life. A person comes to see me as a chiropractor, they're in pain. But more than just being in pain, their pain is negatively impacting an aspect of their life. And so what I do with the person is we get them out of pain and we start to direct them in terms of quality of life. And I think on a simple level, I find this is the most important for all people is, what is my current quality of life? What is my projected quality of life? As I go from 40s to 50s to 60s to 70s, when I'm 80, can I still play with my grandkids? Can I, lift them up without, hurting myself? And when you're talking about expression, for me, what it sounds like is I have to take note of something now that can continually maximize my expression going forward.
Yes. And this is where personalized lifestyle, personalized interventions is going to lead the way of medical health as well as nutritional health, because when we start getting into that, what we're able to do now. So I've had this question often, someone who is has rheumatoid arthritis comes through, they're in their late 60s, they're suffering, as you say, they're in pain. Are we able to now start reversing those processes that have happened to get to that onset of that symptom already? Or do we only need to start with earlier on? So the earlier on you're able to understand more of your own code, are you able to start changing those expression patterns so that you get to an outcome where you have an extended, more fulfilled, more beneficial quality of life, because each one of those functioning little chemical reactions is doing what it needs to do, because we've now actually understood how your body's able to express that. Sure, we're 100% able to do that when you start early. Where we're starting to get to is, how do we do that later on, already when someone has that symptom? So that becomes a more interesting discussion. But where we are getting to is we're getting into an era where we're able to understand not only protein expression, we're able to understand all all of the metabolites of every single chemical reaction. So we're able to profile someone from the code. So we want to start first with code. Then we're able to see all of those different interventions. And then we can see the next level, which is the protein expression. And then from there, we take it to the next level and go, okay, well, from that aspect, we can even go into every single outcome of the cycle. So we're getting into these advances of technology that are able to allow us to see someone's entire profile, and we can start really get quite specific on it. So the exciting part for me is that the specificity with which we actually start getting into someone's health is what's going to become important for the future of,
so there's a couple of things that I want to dive into, but the first one, let me get some clarity. What would you say is a definition of health for you as your biochemist crazy self? How would you define health?
The first part of health is having every single cell thrive.
Wow.
So if every single cell in your body is thriving, every single chemical
and would
reaction
you say
is
at this point in time, where we are technology wise, there's a way of determining whether your cells are thriving? All of them, some of them, percentage? Is there a way of determining that?
So there is definitely a way of determining that.
Shut the door. I'm at your office tomorrow morning. I want to know how much of my body is thriving, baby. I want to thrive.
There is so much out there at the moment. One of the very interesting pieces of technology that we're busy investigating at the moment is where you can take a very small, simple, I want to say, you know, we can even just take a bit of your skin cells, stick them under the microscope. It can go into even a little bit more like into very tiny biopsy. And then we stick that into, you know, a very specialized system, and we can see the expression, the actual real live expression data of each one of those cells.
I'm in, man. I'm in. Where do I sign? I'm on the dotted line. I'm ready to sign. Okay, so now let me.
That one we're working on.
My brain likes to simplify things. So let's say you do an assessment of me, and you say, you know what, you know, you're 60% thriving, or 40% thriving. Is there a cutoff point where, you know, the person is quote unquote too far gone?
So that is a very interesting question. And I don't think anybody's too far gone. I think any biochemical system and an organism is able to start reversing the onset of a phenotype. So phenotype is the expression. It's what we see physically from a genotype. We need to be more clear. I think that the technologies are advancing quickly now, but where we're getting to is what is too far gone. I would think that, you know, if we were to talk something, for example, like the onset of an Alzheimer's, at what point do we start reversing that? But without us understanding variation, without us understanding that person's genetic variation first, we cannot see code. So the first port of call is to understand code first. Then we have to start going into a process of really eliminating the things that are not beneficial in terms of information being understood by this individual. There is a path that we're able to start, I wouldn't want to say reversing, but because that is, you know, we haven't proven it yet. There's no proven science that we can start reversing, but there is a lot of data and research out there that we are able to start reducing the effects of what we're seeing. So there's a very interesting doctor in the US. Her name is Dr. Amy Yasko. And Dr. Amy Yasko started understanding that methylation biochemically, when you are not understanding variations within methylation itself. Methylation is the production of folate, 1-carbon folates. It's the production of homocysteine. It's the production of CRP. It's the production of SAMe. So we need to understand that that is quite a big metabolic cycle that does the job of a lot of aspects of our body. She started investigating if we're able to understand more of this person's code and all of the different links of all of the variations, and we start changing the interventions. She claims in her books that things like ADD, things like autism, things like immune disorders that we do see are reversible over a period of time. So she's got a very interesting book. It's called the it's roadmap to nutrigenomics, and it's a foundational nutrigenomics book. She speaks about nutrigenomics because in biochemistry, one of the biggest things is nutrition is really the starting point of every chemical reaction in our bodies. When you digest food and you're chewing food, you're breaking food down into its monomeric states. And the reason we do that is because the whole process of digestion itself is so that we can get to these monomers so that they can go into these cycles and do what they need to do. And then every single little enzyme in that chemical reaction is doing the job to take different parts of that one monomer and put it where it needs to go in the cycle. Sure. So the most important part is, yes, I think that we are going to get to a point where we can start seeing that, but we need to understand someone's genetic variation first, and we need these tools to start catching up faster and faster.
I mean, just to give a timeline, we've got 7.5 minutes left. So, and Leigh-Ann, you said to me, you said to me we would have trouble. So we're certainly going to have to do this again. But and you know, in terms of my process, you know, I don't want to only interview you once. I'll interview you a couple of times. So that's exciting. So what you're saying is at this point in time, reversing serious conditions is an unknown. We're not saying that we can't do it. We're not saying we can do it, but there's certainly good evidence that that would be something we'd know about in the near future.
100%. The more personalized we get, the more specific we get, the more targeted we get, the more excitement is actually evolving around what we're able to do from not only nutrition, but from exercise, lifestyle, from pharmaceutical interventions. How does someone behave so differently? Like why does someone get a response to a statin this way? And why does someone get a response to a statin this way? Why does someone have an effect to an antidepressant like this? So for example, we haven't even gone into P450 cytochromes. So CYP2C, you know, your CYP3A4, CYP3A5s.
Okay, now you're talking way above my head level. Okay.
Yeah. So there's so much more that I want to get into.
I'm going to stop you now. So if we have to bring it down in the next 6 minutes, okay? So where does someone start to take care of their health? What would you say are sort of, you know, the immediate steps? Anyone on this call, anyone that does get to watch this recording, where would you say someone should start today to start taking care of their health? For me, I'm making a distinction. I'm not talking about illness care. I'm talking about taking care of their health, where you are today, going forward. Where would someone start?
First thing is we need code. We need to understand code, and we need to understand variations. So within our organization, we work with all sorts of genetic companies all over the world, just understanding code. So you can do this from a multitude of different places. And Navigator, what we're very keen on doing is actually deciphering code. So we map that into protein expression pathways. We start understanding what protein expression looks like and how we're able to solve for the interventions. So it's really important to start with variation. Where are you with code? Have to get that first.
So that is you learning about my DNA code.
Yeah, DNA code.
Right.
First and foremost, need to understand that, because we all have different variations.
And I mean, is that like a snip of my hair? Is that like a piece of my tongue? Is that my snot? Is that my semen? I mean, where are we going with it?
Could be all of it. It's either a blood sample through a little pinprick, a little kit, or it is a DNA swab, which is very much like because the whole world knows about COVID, the little nose swab, but this one you use in your cheek. And you don't have to go so far up your nose. So if anybody's had a COVID test, it's a bit ridiculous.
Thank heavens, because you were just about to sell me out of this game. Okay, so
you do not have to stick it so far up to get some cells. And the reason that the swab is actually really nice, and the reason that with blood is a bit more specific, is because all we're wanting to do is make lots and lots and lots and lots of copies of your DNA so that we can start deciphering code. Once we've got code dictates expression pathways, dictates what the protein can do. We can start putting those interventions into place to see. So, but we need to understand code first.
Okay, you got 4 minutes. I've got 2 questions. Okay. First question is, so once you know what someone's code is, how long does it take to start to put a life plan in place?
Not long. The code in itself is how long it takes to feel the effect. Can be anything from
I'm sitting down with you, you know my code, and then you say, okay, Trav, this is the game forward. How long does that take?
So that's typically about an hour and a half first time chat.
Wow.
And then we've got that in place.
So within an hour and a half, you can revolutionize someone's direction going forward.
Yes.
That is ridiculous. Okay, last question. You got 3 minutes to answer this one, okay? What would you like the future of healthcare to look like? And how do we move in that direction? When I'm saying we, I'm talking the collective we. One of the reasons to do this Finding Health and having people involved is to try and get some collectiveness, some cohesion. So what would you like the future of healthcare to look like, and how do we move in that direction?
So let me give you the quick answer on this. I visualize a way that you would be able to, your entire DNA spectrum literally would code for what food you would have, online deliveries, your parcel would arrive, your medicine is derived, it is made up for you. You would like have your Samsung fridge literally just say, you have this code and that code, and you need this and this, and these are all the different fatty acid structures, and this is the stuff that you're going to be. You would walk into, I would walk into Woolies or a Walmart or a what, and they would literally go, oh, we understand, like, you would put your fingerprint down and it would read, and you would go, oh, and it would understand. Like I see a future of health where everything around us is defined by us, by who we are, and not I have such a great thing around this food triangle, this food triangle that we've been fed for so many years of what health really is. I see the future of health being, we define it. Us people on planet Earth, we define what health should look like, because we have all these variations. We're so complex, but we can design this because we are so smart. We have AI that can help us to do this, and that we're actually putting that back into the agricultural food chain, and that the agricultural food chain is starting to understand about what we require as a nutrient and what that nutrient really truly looks like in order for us to thrive. That is my vision for what health really looks like.
You mentioned agriculture. I know that when I first chatted to you, I think that was something that I wanted you to chat about. But we've just got maybe another 4.5 years of conversation still to go. All right, less than a minute. Pranay and Gordon asked 2 questions. If we don't get time to answer them, Leigh-Ann, I'll connect you with those 2 people so you can answer directly. Hi, you spoke about DNA genes can be altered as we age. What affects this, and how does it get altered?
Okay. Fantastic. I'd love to track that through. Is that from Pranay? So how does it get altered? That's part of that methylation. It is part of how so it's thinking, it's nutrients, it's all of that stuff that we've spoken about. How do we alter it as we go along? One of the biggest things is inflammation. We've got to understand that. How are you intrinsically coded for inflammation? And that's going to really alter age-wise, so age-wise of the cell. Other things like redox chemistry, we haven't even got into that yet, how your body cleans up, negative reactive oxygen species within the cell. So all of those genes are things that we can